They called her the Angel of Firebase Charlie, a blonde medic whose beauty could stop a firefight. But when 300 North Vietnamese surrounded their base in 1969, this Stanford graduate turned battlefield nurse revealed tactical genius that would save an entire company. What she did next became classified for 40 years. July 15, 1969, Firebase Bravo. Mortar shells screaming overhead. Blood in the mud. Death in the air. Victoria Sterling grabbed the radio as the latest intelligence crackled through. Bravo base, enemy strength estimated 300 NVA regulars. You are completely surrounded. Reinforcements ETA 72 hours. 72 hours? Captain Patterson's voice cracked with panic. Our ammo won't last 6. Boom! A mortar round exploded 20 meters from the command bunker, showering them with dirt and shrapnel. Victoria spread the tactical map across the sandbags. Listen to me. All of you. You're just a medic. Shut up. Victoria's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. 300 enemy soldiers are going to kill us all. But they have one weakness. Staff Sergeant Coleman spat tobacco juice. What weakness? They're predictable. Victoria's red pen traced patterns on the map. Every night, 0200 hours, they attack from here. Every morning, 0600, they withdraw to here. They follow Soviet doctrine like it's scripture. Whistle. An RPG streaked overhead, exploding in the motor pool. So what's your plan, Doc? Lieutenant Mitchell's hands shook as he lit a cigarette. Victoria's green eyes hardened. We're going to turn their strength into their weakness. But first, you need to understand something. She paused as automatic weapons fire erupted from the perimeter. The man commanding them isn't some jungle fighter. Colonel Min Chow graduated from Princeton, studied under MacArthur's staff officers, and the Soviet advisor with him, Major Petrov, wrote half the counterinsurgency manual the Russians use. Coleman frowned. So we're screwed. No, Rick. We're educated. Victoria's finger traced a complex pattern on the map. Because I read the same books they did. 1.00 hours. Victoria's voice whispered through the radio network. Alpha team, position. Bravo team, position. Charlie team. Wait for my signal. In the darkness beyond the wire, 300 North Vietnamese soldiers moved through the jungle like ghosts. But Victoria had read their playbook. They'll come through Sector 7, she murmured to Coleman, who crouched beside her in the observation post. Soviet manual, page 127. Maximum concealment through forested approach. How can you be so sure? Because Petrov trained at the Frunze Military Academy. They drill the same scenarios for 3 years. Victoria adjusted her binoculars. There, see them? Dark shadows flowed through the treeline, exactly where she'd predicted. Jesus, Coleman breathed. You called it perfectly. Phase 1 always works, Victoria said. It's Phase 2 where things get interesting. She keyed the radio. Fire mission, coordinates 347 to 521. 3 rounds, white phosphorus. Boom, boom, boom. The jungle erupted in white-hot chemical fire. But Victoria wasn't targeting the soldiers. What the hell, Doc? You missed them completely. I didn't miss, Rick. I just blocked their retreat route. Victoria's smile was cold. Now they have to come straight at us. And when they do... TAK. Muzzle flashes lit up the night as the NVA assault began. All teams, execute Pattern 7. The Americans opened fire from concealed positions, creating a devastating crossfire exactly where Victoria had calculated the enemy would be funneled. For 15 minutes, it looked like her plan was working perfectly. Then everything went to hell. 1.45 hours. Victoria was monitoring radio chatter when she heard something that made her blood freeze. Russian voices. On the NVA frequency. Coleman, we have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where the enemy just figured out we have someone who can read their playbook. Boom. A massive explosion rocked the eastern perimeter. Then another. Then another. Doc. Mitchell's voice crackled through the radio. They're not following the pattern. They've split into 4 groups, and they're hitting us from everywhere. Victoria grabbed her rifle and tactical vest. Petrov's adapting. He knows we predicted their moves. So what do? We adapt faster. But as she ran toward the command post, Victoria realized she'd underestimated her opponent. The methodical attacks had stopped. Now came chaos warfare. Crack! A sniper's bullet whined past her ear. Sniper! Coleman dove for cover, pulling Victoria down with him. Where? Northwest, about 200 meters. But Doc, how did they get a sniper behind our lines? Victoria's mind raced. Because while we were watching the obvious attack, they sent a reconnaissance team through the swamp. Standard Spetsnaz infiltration. TAK. Automatic weapons fire erupted from inside their own perimeter. Multiple infiltrators, someone screamed over the radio. They're inside the wire. Victoria keyed her radio. All teams, fall back to secondary positions. Execute Hammerfall. What's Hammerfall? Coleman asked as they sprinted toward the bunker. Something I just made up, Victoria replied, because apparently Princeton and Stanford are about to have a very violent debate. 2.15 hours. The battle had devolved into a deadly game of three-dimensional chess. Victoria crouched in the communications bunker, surrounded by maps, radio equipment, and the constant chatter of combat. Every few seconds, she'd give an order that seemed to make no sense. Bravo team, withdraw from Sector 4. Doc, that'll leave our flank exposed. Trust me, Rick. 2 minutes later, a massive mortar barrage obliterated Sector 4. If Bravo team had still been there, they'd all be dead. How did you know? Mitchell asked, amazement in his voice. Because Petrov's following the Frunze Academy manual. Page 247. After initial probe, concentrate fires on strongest defensive position. Our Sector 4 looked strongest, so he targeted it. But even as she spoke, Victoria knew Petrov was learning her methods. Boom! The bunker shook as an artillery shell landed close. Incoming transmission, the radio operator called. It's in English, ma'am. Victoria took the handset. A cultured Russian accent filled the bunker. This is Major Petrov. I know you can hear me, American strategist. You fight well for someone hiding behind other men's courage. Victoria keyed the transmit button. This is Lieutenant Sterling. You talk well for someone losing a battle. Petrov's laugh was cold. Losing? My dear, we have not yet begun to fight. Your little mathematics cannot account for what comes next. The radio went dead. What comes next? Coleman asked. Victoria's face went pale as she studied the map. He's been testing us, learning our response patterns. And now, boom, boom, boom. A coordinated barrage began hammering their positions. Now he springs his real trap. 2.30 hours. Hell descended on Firebase Bravo. The methodical probe stopped. The careful maneuvering ended. What came next was pure, overwhelming violence. Mortars! Someone screamed as the first salvo landed. Rockets from the north. Ground assault, multiple axes. Victoria tried to process the chaos, but Petrov had learned from their earlier exchanges. Instead of predictable Soviet doctrine, he was improvising, mixing Russian tactics with Vietnamese guerrilla warfare and pure aggressive chaos. Doc, Coleman's voice was barely audible over the explosions. What do? They're hitting us everywhere at once. Victoria stared at the map, her mathematical mind trying to find patterns in the storm of violence outside. But there were no patterns. Petrov had abandoned his textbooks. Crash! The bunker's roof beam cracked as another shell landed close. Ma'am! The radio operator's voice was panicked. We've got breakthrough in sectors 2, 5, and 7. Multiple enemy infantry inside the perimeter. Ammunition status? Victoria asked, her voice deadly calm despite the chaos. 40% and dropping fast. Victoria closed her eyes, thinking faster than she'd ever thought in her life. Mathematics, psychology, game theory. There had to be a solution. Got it, she whispered. Got what? Mitchell asked. Petrov's mistake. He thinks he's fighting American soldiers. Victoria's eyes opened, blazing with sudden certainty. But he's not. What do you mean? He's fighting Victoria Sterling. And Victoria Sterling doesn't play by anyone else's rules. She grabbed the radio handset and switched to the command frequency. All teams, execute Broken Arrow. Doc, what's Broken Arrow? Victoria was already moving, grabbing her rifle and medical bag. Something that's either going to save us all, or get us all killed in the next 10 minutes. 2.45 hours. Victoria's plan was insane. Instead of defending their positions, she ordered every American soldier to abandon the firebase and move into the jungle. Are you crazy? Captain Patterson demanded over the radio. We leave our fortifications, we're dead. Captain, if we stay in our fortifications, we're dead anyway, Victoria replied as she led Coleman and Mitchell through the wire. Petrov's got us outgunned and outmanned. Our only advantage is that he doesn't expect us to be stupid enough to fight him on his own ground. They moved through the darkness like ghosts, 47 American soldiers infiltrating the jungle where 300 enemy troops were operating. This is suicide, Doc, Coleman muttered. No, Rick. This is mathematics. Victoria checked her compass. Petrov spread his forces to attack multiple objectives. That means his command structure is dispersed. Find the command structure, eliminate it, and the whole attack collapses, Mitchell finished. But how do we find his command post in this jungle? Victoria pulled out a small electronic device. With this, what is it? Radio direction finder. Every time Petrov transmits orders, this gives us his location. She paused to listen to the device's beeping. And he's been transmitting a lot tonight. Beep, beep, beep. Northwest, about 800 meters, Victoria said. Let's go introduce ourselves. 3.00 hours. Deep jungle. Victoria led her team through terrain that would have challenged experienced rangers, but her mathematical mind turned navigation into a science. She calculated distances, compensated for compass deviation, and adjusted for terrain features with mechanical precision. How do you know where you're going? Mitchell whispered. Triangulation. Every time their radio transmits, I get a bearing. 3 bearings give me an exact position. Victoria paused to check the direction finder. Plus, I know where they have to be. How? Because Petrov needs line of sight to coordinate his attack. That means high ground. And there's only one piece of high ground in this area that provides tactical advantage. She pointed through the darkness at a barely visible ridgeline. Hill 247. It's not on any of our maps, but it's on the French colonial survey from 1923. I memorized it. Coleman shook his head. Doc, you scare me sometimes. Good. Because if I scare you, I terrify them. They continued through the jungle, moving with surgical precision toward their target. But as they got closer, Victoria realized that Petrov had one more surprise waiting. Stop, she whispered, holding up her hand. What is it? Victoria pointed to barely visible trip wires stretched between the trees. Booby traps. Lots of them. So how do we get through? Victoria studied the pattern of wires for a long moment. Very carefully. And with a little help from vector calculus, she began moving through the minefield of explosives, calculating angles and trajectories that would take them between the death traps. It took 20 minutes to advance 50 meters. But finally, they reached the base of Hill 247, and that's when the real war began. 3.30 hours. Hill 247. Victoria could see the enemy command post through her binoculars, radio antennas, map tables, and in the center of it all, a tall man in Soviet uniform directing the battle with calm precision. Major Alexei Petrov. How many guards? Coleman whispered. 12. Plus Petrov makes 13. Victoria studied the enemy positions. They're positioned for defense against ground assault from the south. They're not expecting attack from above. Above? Victoria pointed to the cliff face that rose another 50 feet above the command post. Rock climbing. Basic physics. Gravity is our friend. Mitchell looked at the sheer rock wall. Doc, that's impossible. No, Lieutenant. That's Stanford Mountain Club. 3 years running. Victoria slung her rifle across her back. Wait here. If I'm not back in 30 minutes, withdraw to the river and call for extraction. You're going up there alone? It's a one-person job. Too many climbers make too much noise. Victoria began checking her equipment. Besides, This isn't about firepower. It's about precision. She started climbing. The rock face was treacherous in the darkness, made worse by the need for absolute silence. Every handhold had to be tested, every footstep calculated. One mistake would bring the entire enemy position down on her. 20 feet up, 30, 40. Below, she could hear Petrov's voice giving orders in Russian, coordinating the continuing assault on Firebase Bravo. His forces were winning. In another hour, they'd overrun the American positions completely, unless Victoria reached the top of the cliff and looked down at the enemy command post. 13 men, completely focused on their radios and maps, never thinking to look up. She unsung her rifle and attached the suppressor she'd been saving for this moment. Time for some advanced mathematics, she whispered to herself. The first shot took out the radio operator. The second eliminated the officer studying the maps. The third dropped the guard watching the approach trail. By the fourth shot, they knew they were under attack, but they still didn't know from where. "Sniper!" someone shouted in Vietnamese. Panic erupted in the command post as soldiers dove for cover behind equipment and trees. But Victoria had the high ground and clear fields of fire. Shots 5, 6, and 7 cleared the remaining guards. That left Petrov and 5 soldiers trapped in a defensive position with nowhere to run. "Major Petrov," Victoria called down in English. "This is Lieutenant Sterling. I believe we have some unfinished business." Petrov's voice carried up from below. So the American strategist reveals herself. "Come down and face me properly." "I don't think so, Major. You see, the thing about high ground is that it provides excellent tactical advantage." Victoria's 8th shot shattered the main radio, cutting off Petrov's communication with his assault forces. "Your attack on Firebase Bravo just became uncoordinated," she called down. "Without radio communication, your unit commanders will fall back to default defensive positions." Soviet Manual, page 89. Her 9th shot destroyed the backup radio. And now they can't coordinate a withdrawal either, which means they're trapped in offensive positions with no support. Petrov fired up at her position, but the muzzle flash only gave Victoria a perfect target. Shot number 10 took Major Alexei Petrov out of the war permanently. 4.00 hours. Firebase Bravo. Victoria's voice crackled over the radio. "Firebase Bravo, this is Sterling. Enemy command structure is neutralized. Repeat, enemy command is down." The change was immediate and dramatic. Without Petrov's coordination, the NVA assault began to falter. Unit commanders, reverting to Soviet doctrine just as Victoria had predicted, began pulling back to defensive positions. "Doc!" Coleman's voice was filled with amazement. "They're withdrawing. All sectors reporting enemy withdrawal." Victoria descended the cliff face with the same mathematical precision she'd used to climb it. By the time she reached the bottom, the remaining enemy soldiers had melted back into the jungle. 05.00 hours. Dawn broke over Firebase Bravo. Captain Patterson found Victoria in the communications bunker, calmly updating the tactical log. "Sterling, what you did up there? How did I what, Captain?" Victoria looked up from her paperwork. "Kill 13 enemy soldiers single-handedly. Eliminate their command structure. Turn a losing battle into a complete victory." Victoria set down her pen. "I used mathematics, Captain. Vector calculus for the climb, ballistics for the shooting, game theory for predicting their responses, psychology for understanding their weaknesses." "But you're a medic." "I'm also a Stanford graduate with degrees in mathematics and psychology." Victoria stood up. "Plus 3 years of advanced tactical training that's classified above your security level." Patterson stared at her. "Who are you really?" "Someone who believes that brains beat brawn, Captain. Every single time." 6.00 hours. Secure radio transmission to Pentagon. Operation Broken Arrow successful. Firebase Bravo secure. Enemy forces dispersed. Casualties: American 2 wounded, 0 Kia. Enemy: estimated 47 Kia, including senior command staff. Pentagon: confirm casualty figures: 0 American Kia. Confirmed: 0 American killed in action. Who was the commanding officer during this engagement? Long pause. Lieutenant Victoria Sterling, Medical Corps. Sterling's file shows her as a combat medic. How did a medic? Sir, I recommend you review Lieutenant Sterling's complete classified file. Another pause. Jesus Christ. She's CIA. Yes, sir. Experimental program. Testing feasibility of female operatives in combat command roles. And the test results? I think the results speak for themselves, sir. 2009 Pentagon Archives. Dr. Robertson opened the declassified file marked Operation Broken Arrow, Firebase Bravo Incident. The first page stopped him cold. Subject: Lieutenant Victoria Sterling Classification, CIA Special Operations Mission. Combat Leadership Assessment Outcome. Complete Success Recommendation. Expand Program Immediately Status. Classification to be maintained for 40 years. Chun read through the entire file twice before he could believe it. A 24-year-old female CIA operative had single-handedly saved 47 American soldiers by outmaneuvering Princeton-educated enemy commanders using pure mathematics and tactical psychology. And the Pentagon had buried the story for 4 decades. Why? Chun muttered to himself. The answer was in the final memo, signed by the Secretary of Defense. While Lieutenant Sterling's performance exceeded all expectations, political considerations require that this operation remain classified. The American public is not ready to accept that our most successful combat commander in Vietnam was a 24-year-old woman who used mathematics instead of conventional military tactics. Victoria Sterling died quietly in Los Angeles in 2010, age 71. Her obituary listed her as a retired nurse and Vietnam veteran. Only 12 people attended her funeral, but one of them was Rick Coleman, now 83 and in a wheelchair. He placed a wreath on her grave with a simple inscription. To Doc Sterling, you prove that the greatest weapon isn't the gun, it's the mind. Firebase Bravo remembers. That evening, Coleman sat with his grandson and began a story. Tim, let me tell you about the most remarkable person I ever met. Her name was Victoria Sterling, and she taught me that sometimes the most dangerous person on a battlefield isn't the one with the biggest gun. Who is it, Grandpa? It's the one with the biggest brain. And that's how a 24-year-old CIA operative disguised as a combat medic used advanced mathematics to defeat 300 enemy soldiers and save Firebase Bravo. Her story was classified for 40 years. The Pentagon finally released the files in 2009. Now you know why America's greatest military mind was kept secret for nearly half a century.